This week's episode is brought to you by Sin Bodhi's Custom LJNs. Go to facebook.com/SinsLJNs. That's SINNSLJNS. And check out the amazing work that Sin Bodhi does with his custom action figures. If you would like a custom LJN style 8-inch figure of yourself or your favorite professional wrestler, just contact Sin Bodhi. Get your custom wrestling figure from an actual pro wrestler. Sin Bodhi has great designs, great prices, and he is really good looking. He told me to say that, and I agreed to it. Why? Because he is.
Wrestling is life. Wrestling is life. Wrestling is life, is wrestling.
Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Wrestling is Life is Wrestling with Cody Deaner. I am Cody Deaner, and I am a professional wrestler. I'm a professional wrestling producer. I'm a professional and traveling motivational speaker. I am a proud husband to a beautiful wife, also a proud father to 4 amazing children who are super smart and super cute. You've been hearing them each and every week on this episode, doing some ad reads and commercials with me. And I am a professional podcaster. I put professional ? As a prefix there because you have to be paid to be a professional. And yeah, I guess I am kind of getting paid to do this because of my amazing patrons over at patreon.com/Cody Deaner. All the people over there that are supporting me are getting this episode. I've already got this episode 3 weeks ago, early and ad-free. You got the entire Crazy Steve conversation 3 weeks ago, as well as a bonus story and a whole bunch of other exclusive content. So a huge thank you to all of my patrons out there. I'm slowly building my patron count, slowly each and every week. Somebody's signing up, and I appreciate you so very much for supporting me and this project that I have started called Wrestling is Life is Wrestling with Cody Deaner. Because of you, those of you that are supporting me, whether it's financially through Patreon or supporting me by going to prowrestlingtees.com/Cody Deaner and getting yourself a t-shirt, or getting a personal video message for yourself or friend or family member over at cameo.com/Cody Deaner, or if you're supporting me through taking a screenshot of this, sharing it with your friends, writing a review in Apple or Spotify, or dropping me a comment on YouTube, whatever it is, I appreciate your support because of you, we're growing. We're hitting the charts, guys. In the last couple of weeks, we broke the top 50 top Apple wrestling podcasts in Canada with this show as well. In just the last week, I posted over on my socials at Cody Deaner that we have broken the top 100 for wrestling podcasts in the United States. And last time I checked, we got even higher. We're up to like 70 or something. So we're breaking the top 70. Now, some people are like, wait, there's that many wrestling podcasts? The answer is yes. There is thousands of them. It's one of the reasons why I didn't even think I wanted to do this podcast, because I'm like, man, does the world really need another wrestling podcast? Because there's wrestling podcasts, there's literally thousands of them. What am I going to do and contribute to this huge ocean of wrestling podcasts? Well, obviously enough, because I'm in the top 70 in the United States and well above I think I've reached 30 in Canada or something. So, man, whatever it is that's making you guys listen and support and want to get behind this, I don't know exactly what it is, but I'm going to keep doing it. I know that one of the things is having amazing guests, like the guest that we're going to have again today in my buddy Crazy Steve. This is the dramatic and wonderful conclusion to this 3-part series with my friend Crazy Steve. And Man, I'm almost sad that it's over. It's been such a wild ride, and in a very, very good way. I have got such positive feedback from listeners all around the world saying that they've gotten something from this story. You have shared it with me, whether that's through social media or emailing me or seeing me at an independent wrestling show or an Impact Wrestling event. You've approached me personally to tell me how much this podcast means to you, and I've passed that on to my buddy Steve, and he appreciates it, and I appreciate it. And I just want to read right now a comment that somebody dropped over on the YouTube page, which is youtube.com/ at Cody Deaner podcast. And this is from Night Vampire 1 over on YouTube. And they wrote this about this series thus far with Crazy Steve. It reads this: Steve has had things in his life which could easily have brought him down and left him wallowing in self-pity. So many people lean into that and use it to fail and cry that the world owes them something. Steve has made himself a success, obviously with help and breaks, of course, but it's good to see. There's no reason why he shouldn't be an inspiration for wrestlers and livers of life in general. I couldn't agree more, Night Vampire 1 over on YouTube. Thank you for that comment. And like I said, I couldn't agree more. Steve's story has been an inspiration to me for years, not just for my goals in wrestling, but for life in general. Knowing what Steve has gone through and overcome has inspired me in so many ways in my life, and I knew that it would inspire listeners as well. And Night Vampire 1, you agree with me and hope that more people will be inspired, and I know that they are. This is the reason why I'm doing this, guys. This is the entire reason why I started Wrestling is Life is Wrestling, because I knew that there were wrestlers, friends of mine, that have overcome so many obstacles in this wild world of wrestling, and that the way they've overcome those obstacles can help anybody, not just wrestlers, anyone in life, because of how wrestling and life interconnect in this very special and positive way. Now, sometimes it can connect in a very negative way, but I try in my life to focus on the positive rather than the negative. So that's what we do here on this podcast, is we explore the positive connections between wrestling and life. Now, I know that that might not get me a lot of play in the sheets, as they say, the dirt sheets. They like to kind of push negativity oftentimes, and negativity also brings more people and clicks and views and clickbait and all that garbage. But that's not what I'm about. I'm about focusing on the positive connection between wrestling and life. And it's working, and I know it's working. It's going to be a slower way of going up the charts. I could probably hit number one if I just started spewing a bunch of crazy, insane hatred. Then maybe I could reach number one in the wrestling podcast charts, but that's not what I'm going to do. I'm going to keep pushing positivity, and we'll keep climbing because of people like you wanting to listen to this, because I know there's an audience for positivity out there rather than negativity. And I know there's an audience out there that wants to listen to Crazy Steve's story, because episode last week's episode, which is episode 8, part 2 with Crazy Steve, is one of my favorite ones yet. And I know it's one of your favorites as well, because the downloads have just keep on coming in, and it's making people want to go back and listen to previous episodes. So thank you, Steve, for again being vulnerable and sharing your story. And I said this last week, and I want to say it again. It surprised a few people, Steve included, when I said that being able to share this story is perhaps one of the most important and best things I've ever done in professional wrestling. And that's saying a lot, because I've been doing this for 23 years and I've got to do a lot of cool things, but I get such satisfaction and gratification out of helping people. And if I can help people through wrestling, then even better. And if I can bring attention to someone like my buddy Steve and his story, and that attention can then help somebody else. Man, isn't that what this is all about? Isn't that what life is all about? Helping other people? Isn't that what wrestling is all about? And isn't wrestling like life and life like wrestling? Yes, it is. I'm proving it. And thank you, Steve. Your story is an inspiring one. And I know we're going to inspire some more people here with part 3, because part 2, we left off with a cliffhanger. We had left off where Steve was telling us that this major goal of his to make it to TNA, he had been striving for years and years trying to make this happen, and he finally gets a tryout. And that comes within the same time frame of weeks of 2 major life events happening. One, his mother committed suicide, and with all the wild things happening in his life that he had to overcome, including what I just mentioned, he decided to pack up and make a life decision to move to the UK. And as all of that's happening in his life, his dream come true happens, and he gets the invite for a tryout with TNA Wrestling, now known as Impact Wrestling. That was a cliffhanger. We stopped right there last week in part 2, and we're going to hear the continuation of that story and all the amazing things to come from that right now. So without further ado, I've just got to update you there on the cliffhanger. You guys remember from last week, tell your friends, tell them they got to listen to the story, and they got to listen to hear part 3 that we're going to listen to right now together. I'm super pumped. Here it is. This is part 3 with Crazy Steve. Let's get to it. Here we go, guys. You are going to love it.
I send Eric Young a DVD of a match, a promo, a biography of like who this character is, like a whole package of it. And he's going to put it in the right hands at Impact Wrestling. On the other hand, at home, my mom had just committed suicide. So that's a huge wind out of my sail.
Of course.
Yep. So I'm going through all this. Then on top of that, I get my visa that says I can move to the UK.
Okay.
All this is kind of all mashed into one.
Yeah.
And I'm having to it's a lot. It's very overwhelming.
Yes, of course.
Right?
Wow.
Right?
Yeah.
So it's strange in how it worked out too. So on one hand, like my mom and her funeral and all that stuff, this is the worst thing that's ever happened to me.
Yes.
But then I get my visa that says I can go.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was so strange, and because up until that point, I felt very uncomfortable or awkward about leaving my mom because she was sick, and
right.
I was looking after her as much as I could, but at the same time I knew I had to get out. But if I left her, that would weigh on me.
Sure.
Right. And then this happened, and then I get this visa, and I'm like, oh my God, this is insane. And then a couple days after that, EY gets a hold of me and says, hey, they're going to bring you in for a tryout. They've seen your package. They're going to bring you in for a tryout in March. I said, in March? I'm supposed to move out of the country at the end of February here. So I had to postpone when I was leaving the country to stay at my hometown and wait till after these March tapings. So
Yes.
The March tapings happen. I show up to Orlando. I'm there for 2 days, and I'm a guest with Impact Wrestling. It's very overwhelming. I've been there a couple times before, but not in this particular form or fashion. And I was told, okay, you're going to have a dark match. So that is a match that happens, in our case, it happens before the show starts. There's no fans in the building.
Oh, so this is even the dark match.
Dark,
yeah,
yes.
Dark.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
not even fans. Yeah.
Not even fans. Just a couple of the wrestlers who care to watch, and the higher ups who are looking to hire you.
Which is just so fans can understand this, that's way harder than a dark match in front of fans, by the way.
Oh,
you have,
my gosh.
right? Like,
yes.
You're everyone that's scrutinizing you, nitpicking what you're doing. You have no fans to feed off of. There's no reaction. It's just, so nerve-wracking. So you're
The
in this
atmosphere
situation.
is definitely not what you experience when you watch televised professional wrestling.
And let me add this, because you said this to me before, Steve.
Mhm.
One of our jobs as wrestlers is to read a room, right?
Yeah.
I have the advantage of looking out in the audience and reading a room by seeing the faces of the people to garner their reaction. You have this like sixth sense of getting a feel for the room, because you can't use your eyesight. I mean, you can listen to what they're doing, but you can't use your eyes to see the reaction. So you just have to go based on feel. So now you're in this situation where, oh man, you don't have any noise to read the room and the feel. I can only imagine like
Yeah.
that scenario, what you're feeling just based on that alone is making me nervous right now. Just even thinking about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but saving grace here, I'm the person they would like me to wrestle is Eric Young.
Oh, wonderful.
Yes.
Yeah.
Now you would think that we had wrestled thousands of times, but the reality is we did not. Like I trained at that school for a year. I was having matches at like 6 months, like on indie shows. So EY would show me how to do stuff from a physical standpoint, but we also had other classmates that I was probably doing more of the physical work with than I was him. And I didn't have like full on matches with EY in front of people because on the independent scene, he was up here and I'm down here. So our paths never would have crossed.
Sure.
So it's, it's not like we have as much physical chemistry as people would think, having known that I trained there.
Right.
But I knew I was in good hands. And the match was what it was. It was fine from what I remember. Again, it's a very, very intimate atmosphere, but you just go. And match was fine. All of the crew and all the guys were super like complimentary. Like, dude, you're going to be hired. I can't believe, and I was there. I didn't know how to take it, but I was super happy about it. And I remember going to bed that night, and EY's in one bed, and he says, I don't think you're going to be wrestling tomorrow. He said, I would be very surprised if they put you in another match. I think you got everything accomplished that you need to get accomplished today. I think you're like, it was a good showing. I was like, sweet. Great. The next day, they had me wrestling. Okay. All right. So they had me wrestling. I think he was a cousin of the Usos. Okay. I know that. And I think he was training at Tommy Dreamer's school at the time. And I know he was younger. He had less experience than I did.
Okay.
And I had also found out that the role that they were potentially going to put me in was in this circus, and I was going to be this clown. And so I had this knowledge, and I had some advice from Tommy Dreamer, who had watched the match the first time with EY. And so I took all of these things, this knowledge of, of what they were potentially looking for, and what someone like a Tommy Dreamer wanted to see if he got the chance to watch me wrestle again. And I kind of switched everything I did. So from how I walked to the ring, what I painted my face more like a clown. I didn't wear the straight jacket like I had wore the day before, because they want a clown. I had brought like a suit jacket that I had painted up to kind of look more clowny, and I just changed a lot of stuff. And then I had this match, and I come to realize that like anybody can have a good match with Eric Young. So it's almost like the test is unfair. And then they put me in the ring with somebody who had less experience, knowing that I'm blind. And so they want to see, one, is he going to hurt somebody? And they also want to see if I could lead. And I'm not going to hurt you if I wrestle you, and I can lead a match if need be. So I can remember that I felt more comfortable the second day for sure, because I knew the vibe of the room. And I can't see everybody or anybody, but my job as a character is just to make people feel weird, make them feel uncomfortable. And I can do that. Yeah. Especially because the room is already uncomfortable.
Sure.
The atmosphere is already uncomfortable. I just have to play off of that. And
interesting. Yeah.
My opponent was he was very new, so he didn't have his character fully developed. So there was a lot of like kind of downtime where he would stay down selling, and I had a lot more chance where I was like, oh, eyes are on me, so I could, I'll turn it up, I'll be more. And so it was, I could feel that, and I knew, and I was comfortable with it, and the match was fine. It was came and went, and after it was said and done, John Gaborik, who was the one me aside, and he said, okay, well, look, what's your status? Like, where are you living? Just kind of tried to get a feel of what I was doing with my life. And at the end, he said, okay, so how do you do it? I was like, what do you mean? He's like, what's the trick? Right. And I'm like, well, no. So I had to think on my feet, and I didn't know how to respond. So I just put over the company, and I was like, oh, well, the lights here are really great. And, the production here is so much different than it is on the independent scene. So that really helps. And just kind of like, I was caught off guard by the questions. So I just kind of had to ramble through it real quick. And,
nice. Okay.
So I chose to put over his lighting and put over
very smart.
company.
Very smart. Good. Good for you.
Yeah. And then after that, he said, okay, well, we shook hands and we went our separate ways. And after, I didn't know this till years later, but like the referee who'd ref that, who's a good friend of ours, Andrew Thomas, he said, oh, well, as soon as I saw you in the ring the second day, I knew you were hired, because we never do that for people. So as soon as you're the only one I think we've ever done that for. So as soon as I saw you, I knew you would be hired.
Oh, wow.
Well, you didn't tell me this, man. I didn't know that. Right. And so that showing came and went. I go back home, dealing with, family stuff again. But I'm now at this point, I'm moving to England, because I've scheduled it. So now I'm moving, picking up moving. So I'm packing, counting down the days. 2 days before I'm to move out of the country, EY messages me, and he says, hey man, I think they're going to hire you. Pretty sure it's a done deal. Congratulations.
Oh, wow.
And I still have the screen capture of the conversation we had. I just looked at it the other day, honestly. And
amazing.
Yeah. And I said, I don't, like, as a wrestler, we all know, like, well, I don't believe it till it's real.
Yep.
Like, so.
The wrestler mentality, for sure.
Yeah. And his message was like, Bob is going to call you later today. Trust me, you are now a contracted professional wrestler. And sure enough, within an hour, Bob Ryder, God rest his soul, called me and we had a conversation. He said, well, I think we'd like to use you. I said, well, this is fantastic news, Bob. And he says, now EY was saying something about you going to visit England. And I said, well, I'm not necessarily visiting England, Bob. I'm actually moving my entire life there. And so I say all this to say for your listeners as a frame of context. I was worried about moving to England and getting signed by Impact because I'm somebody who doesn't have a lot of independent wrestling buzz. I just happened to be in the right place at the right time. The right people happened to say that they know me and put in a good word, and I had a good showing. Having said that, a plane ticket from London, England to Orlando every week or every 2 weeks can get really expensive.
Mm-hmm.
And and again, I'm not necessarily bringing in a lot of money to this company because I'm brand new, and a large portion of the US audience has no idea who I am, despite the fact that I had already been wrestling for 12 years at this point.
Mm-hmm.
So I felt, and EY also felt, that it could potentially sour them on the deal. And they could find somebody who's in the States who could be a clown just as easily as they could find someone like myself. So I explained this to Bob, like, I'm moving there. And he said, well, we're not going to use you right away. So go ahead and move, and we'll remain in contact. And, when we're ready to start using you, we'll fly you in. And that was the conversation. So after that, I had talked to EY and I let him know what's going on. And so what am I going to do about this England thing, because they could get tired of that real quick. We have no idea if this circus thing is going to last. There's so many variables.
Mm-hmm.
And so he said, well, you'll just live with me. It's fine. I said, what?
Yeah. I'll talk to Sarah. What? You'll be with us for like 6 months to a year. Get yourself a nice apartment. You can live with me.
Okay, great. Well, 6 months to a year turned into 5 years real quick.
Another shout out to the amazing person that UI is. Yes.
And amazing shout out to his lovely wife Sarah as well,
Absolutely.
because
Yes.
that doesn't happen without her blessing. Let me tell you.
Yeah. Wow, dude.
Yes. But like and I say that, but the dynamic of the household, as you know, was nothing but positivity. We all had the same goals for the house. When one of us was traveling, there's a good chance the other one's home, so we can take care of the dogs. Like, I'm a very easy person to live with. I'm very cleanly. So
Yeah.
as far as roommates go, if I was a bad roommate, it wouldn't have been 5 years. I'll tell you that much.
So how long? So you did move to England though, didn't you? Because I know you were there for a while.
I did.
Like, how long were you actually even there living before you moved
visited
back?
quite a bit, and then once I fully moved my life, I was there for a month.
You were only there for a month.
Only there for a month, and then that's when I started emailing Christy Hemme, which blew my mind at that time too.
Yeah, of course.
And so like,
it
was a very exciting, interesting.
Shout out to Christy, who's an amazing person as well.
1,000%.
She's so lovely.
Yes.
This is a question that I've asked all of my guests who have signed their ever elusive contract, which is, oh man. So it's that people don't understand how hard it is for a Canadian to get signed, because we also have to have a visa. So you had to get like a visa for the UK, and then you're going to have to do this visa for the United States. Like, there's all these things that are kind of working against you and are making the process even harder. My question for you, Steve, is, again, a question that I ask all of my friends that have signed their ever elusive contract.
Mm-hmm.
What's harder, getting signed or staying signed?
Oh, that's a good question. That's a really good question.
And the reason I ask this is because I talk to so many young wrestlers that are like, man, I just want to get signed. I just got to get signed. Like, which of course in that phase of your life, like, your whole goal is to get that contract. And I've had this conversation with the young wrestlers, like, dude, you think getting signed is difficult? That's not the hardest part. The harder part is staying signed. From my experience, it's staying signed, even though
I guess so, right? Like,
even though you said, and you just said it in passing, which is crazy in any other line of work, it took you 12 years before you got a contract.
Yeah.
Like, it took me 10 years before getting a contract. And people are like, wait a minute, you're saying staying signed is harder? It took you a decade, Steve. It took you a dozen years. Like an eighth of a lifetime. Like, what? I don't know what. I'm giving you time to think. What's your answer? Is it harder to get signed, or is it harder to stay signed?
Going back to staying signed, but you don't. That's the thing, like, because you don't know it at the time, right? But once you are signed, and then you see the scope of everything, it quickly comes to you like, oh, the game changes. Like, now it's time to start. Now, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. And the competition is that much more elevated.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Like, you're not. It's almost like you're playing a whole other game now.
It's completely different.
Right. Like, you were playing. You were playing in one game, and it's like you didn't just switch teams. You switched sports now. Almost. Yeah.
Yes. It presents itself with its all new challenges.
Yeah.
So you didn't consider, because how could you know?
So for you and with your situation, how was television wrestling different for you because of your blindness and because of your handicap and all of these things? Like, were there challenges that you weren't expecting that you had to overcome?
Oh, for certain, like, not only that, but like, I'm not a big guy. I'm small. So in terms of impact, I'd be wrestling against guys more my size, which is the X Division style, which involves a lot of dives and flips and a lot of aerial maneuvers. Part of that is that there's got to be someone who takes those maneuvers, and I can't always be the one giving. Sometimes I got to be the one receiving and taking these things as well. So that presented a challenge when it came to guys who wanted to dive over the top rope onto me. And I'd have to explain to them, like, look, man, like, as soon as you get up there, all I see is the lights.
Wow.
And I will lose you, so you can't dive on me. And so I've never really come to, no one's ever been butthurt over the fact that I've had to edit what they can do to me.
Sure.
Right? Because
Yeah.
I just explained to them, like, dude, like, if I'm not in the right position, then either I'm going to get hurt or you're going to get hurt. And I don't want either of those scenarios to take place. So it's just, let's think of something different that we can do that doesn't involve you jumping on my head.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And there's very few people who I allow do it.
Yeah.
Like Mike Bailey and Low Key are like the only two. And both those guys have crazy body control and assured me that not only will I be okay, but they'll be okay. And like, just you stand here, I jump over here.
Yes.
Like,
you
know, so, but other than that, then I have to tell guys not to do that. I've been in the Ultimate X match where there's an elevated cable above the ring that you have to jump up and grab.
Oh my God, Steve. Yeah.
Uh-huh. And this is at a time where Impact is going through their blue stage. So everything was dark blue.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah. And I can remember like knowing I was in that. That's a whole nother podcast in that thing. That was like match 8 of a 10 match loop that I did in like 2 days.
Oh my gosh.
Yes. And so like, and the thing to get into the match was you were in a series of triple threats, and the winners of these triple threats would go into the main event of this show, which would be Ultimate X. Mm-hmm. So from a planning standpoint, you could never actually physically plan out the match with all competitors because there was always 1 or 2 guys who were getting ready for their triple threat match or who were in their triple threat match at the time.
Wow.
And we had like about an 8 or 16-minute window where we had everybody together to kind of come together with this organized, violent opera that we're about to do.
Unbelievable.
Yes. On top of that, like the object is to climb this cable. So for the physical standpoint, I'm like, as soon as I look up, all I see is lights. I can't see where this cable is. I have to just jump up and hope. Right?
What a perfect line. I'm going to have to put that into a YouTube short. In my Wrestling is Life is Wrestling podcast, all I can do is jump up and hope.
Yeah.
That's a life lesson right there. Just jump up and hope, man. Just jump up and hope.
Okay, so we're gonna start this thing, about talking and people hearing my beautiful voice. So what we're gonna talk about is
before you tell them what we're gonna talk about, you gotta tell them who you are.
Oh, I am Eden, Cody Deaner's daughter.
Oh, that's right. And how old are you, Eden, Cody Deaner's daughter?
5.
Yes. Okay.
And today we're going to talk about Crazzy Steve and Net Pro Studios.
Exactly. See, you're the host now.
Yeah.
I'm just along for the ride. You're going to tell them all about it. I don't even have to set anything up. You're doing all that for me because you're so good at this. Okay, what do you want to tell them about Crazy Steve?
I want to tell them about that this is something that Crazy Steve has. Okay. So he's a little bit blind.
Oh, yes, he is. You're right. He's a little bit blind. He's legally blind. So he can't see everything. He kind of sees shapes and blurs and stuff.
Yeah, but how he can wrestle is because he's blind, but how he wrestles is because that he forms with touching and blurry shapes.
Yes.
And applying feeling people.
That's right. So that's genius. And I told you this a while ago, so I just want my listeners to know that I have not prepped Eden at all before this interview. This is a discussion we had weeks ago, about how Steve can do what he does because he only sees blurry shapes, but he uses feel and touching of the wrestlers so that he knows how to strike them and how to do the maneuvers and stuff. He has to feel things.
Yeah, he has to feel things to know where they are.
Yeah, isn't that amazing?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty cool that he could wrestle like that. But what's Net Pro Studios?
Net Pro Studios is a place where people make wrestlers and lots of things.
They make wrestlers. You're right. It's like this, but the wrestlers they make are humans. So Net Pro Studios is a wrestling school.
Yes.
Yes. Do you go to school?
Yeah.
Do you like your teacher?
Yeah.
Yeah. You have fun at school. You like to what kind of things do you find out at recess when you're at school?
Oh, so we find toads.
Find
toads?
This
is one thing that happened that was very sad.
Oh, wow. I don't know if I want to hear this. Is it really sad? Is it going to make me cry?
Maybe, because it made me cry.
Oh, I think I know what you're going to say. I don't think we should tell them that. I don't want to make any of my listeners cry. Is this about the boys that were being mean to the toads? Oh, it's not that? Okay. 'Cause we don't like to be mean to any animals or reptiles or anything.
It's not this.
Okay, what are you going to tell me?
I'm going to tell you that it's a little bit mean.
Oh, a little bit mean. Okay, tell me.
So it was this girl named Gemma.
Yes.
And we had a toad.
Yes.
And when my friend put the toad down, Emma catched it.
Yes.
She was running to the fence, about to throw it over the fence, and then she dropped it, and then it was gone. But now she found the toad.
Okay.
She found the toad, and then threw it over the fence, and I started to cry.
Oh no! So you never found the toad?
Yeah.
But the positive thing is, they're doing.
So we had to end up finding toads.
So you just threw Emma under the bus, so to speak, even though you don't know what that means, but my listeners will. And
I don't know why she did that.
I don't know why she would do that anyways. Yeah.
We just found it so quickly, and then when we just did that, she just threw it over the fence, even though it was so soon.
Oh man! But the positive thing, Eden, is
she said that we have to let it go.
Oh, let it go, go back to its home?
Yeah, but we were taking care of it.
Okay, but she's got a point.
So then nobody steps on it.
Well, there's a home for the frogs over the fence because they're doing construction, and in those constructions, a bunch of big puddles and water everywhere, and that's where the toads are coming from. They're coming from those big, giant puddles that they're making with the construction. So the toad probably did go home, and then more toads will come out of there to your school, and you can find more at recess with your friends.
And this is something that happened that was so sad, but it's not about the thing.
Okay, we don't have enough time to talk about all your toad sad stories because we're supposed to talk about Net Pro Studios.
It's very quick. I just had to say one more thing.
Okay, one more thing quick.
I just had to say that I had a toad.
Yep.
It had a baby in the tummy. It was sick, and it couldn't even hop. It puked, and then it couldn't even hop. And it had a baby in the tummy when it was sick. And then I had to let it go, but it couldn't even go anywhere. It couldn't hop, and now when that happened, it means that we let it into the glass, but I think it didn't even survive, so it probably just died, but I don't know what happened to it.
Well, I appreciate you coming on here and promoting Steve's Net Pro Studio. Well, let's try to make a connection. What does frogs and toads have to do with Crazy Steve's Net Pro Studios Wrestling School? Is there anything similar about those two things?
Because we're not supposed to talk about it.
Oh, no. That's fine. I know. Actually, I just thought of one. What do toads do?
They jump around.
Yes. They jump around. And you know what you do in a wrestling school, in a ring? What do?
Jump around.
You jump around just like a toad. So if you want to learn how to jump around like a toad, go to Net Pro Studios. So it's Facebook. Can you repeat after me? Facebook.com. You say what I say.
Facebook.com.
Okay. /
Cody Deaner.
No. That's all the other stuff I made you say.
Pro Studio.
Yeah, Net Pro Studios. You say that.
Net Pro Studios.
Yeah, say it one more time. Facebook.com.
Face.com
.com
.com/net
net pro.
studios.
Yeah, good for you. Can you say bye, Eden?
Bye.
And so like that's what I had to do. It was, I can remember, like, I don't get nervous about wrestling so much these days, having done it for 21 years at this point. But that was a time where I was like, I don't know.
Yeah.
One, I don't know if I'll be able to do this, but I don't want anybody else getting hurt because we have so many moving parts and this is such a crazy match and we've had zero time to plan it.
Yes.
So yeah, that's a whole thing. I've been in the Feast or Fired match where there's briefcases hanging above the.
Okay. Yeah.
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 And so I can remember doing that, and you get turned around backwards with a move or something like that. And I was on the up and up. So I start climbing the top rope to go grab the briefcase, only to realize there's no briefcase on this top turnbuckle. Right?
Steve.
Like, oh,
right.
no. And like, there's no hiding that. Everybody sees that. Like, I just have to. It's an embarrassing moment. And like, and I didn't even really have character to fall back on. When the clown version of me is doing something like this, it can be funny. But when it's like Decay, Crazy Steve, which it was at this point, I'm supposed to be this kind of badass character. There's no, it just is. It just happens.
Yeah. I could ask you about certain like amazing parts of your career with Impact. Like I could talk to you about, the Hardy compound and all of those things. And I'm assuming you've talked about these things on other podcasts before, that people can go out and listen to. And even though all that stuff is super intriguing to me, This Is Wrestling is Life is Wrestling, I want to look at kind of key moments in your career and try to get into your mind of what you're thinking in terms of your life and what was the life experience and lessons that were learned surrounding that. So even though we could spend a long time on your first run with Impact, I actually want to skip to the end of that first run and you leaving, and knowing that you leaving was a risk that you were taking. What led you to want to take that risk? And at that moment in your life, and what did you learn through the process about yourself through leaving Impact that first time?
Yeah. So that's when you break it down and you think about it, it's like, oh man, I worked 12 years to get here. And this is the place that I thought I wanted to be at. And it's not that I wasn't, it was just that life was presenting me with another option. And I didn't know how lucrative that option would be from not necessarily a money standpoint, but from like a life standpoint.
Sure.
I didn't know I knew that it could go one of two ways. It could go bad or not necessarily bad, but it might not go how I want it to go. Or I could get hired and go to the WWE and who knows what could go on from there, but it's an option.
Yeah.
Or I could leave this place that I worked so hard to be at. And so I had to really carefully figure out make this decision. And I ultimately went with the decision, okay, I'm going to leave Impact and I'm going to do this tryout for WWE.
Yeah.
And it led that whole bet on yourself.
Yeah. Yep.
Going with that mentality. And I had some key friends in there. A key lesson I teach people is it's not about who you know in professional wrestling. It's who's willing to say that they know you.
That's good. I just said in an interview with somebody the other day that, it's not what you know, it's who you know. Mm-hmm. But you're adding on to that. Actually, there's a third thing. It's not who you know, it's who you know that's willing to
say that they know you.
Say that they know you. Wow.
Because you can know a lot of people in this business, but if you're a dick or if you're,
mm-hmm.
they're not going out of their way to put your name attached to theirs.
Of course.
So, as far as life lessons, I've always found like just to be as nice as you can.
Yeah. Yeah.
Be a nice person.
Absolutely.
You know?
What
be a good human.
Yep. Kindness is cool, man.
Yep.
Yep. Kindness is cool. So our lives intersect here, Steve, because you decided to go have this WWE tryout experience, which is 3 grueling, insane days. I was there with you. We did this tryout together, which I'm so grateful that I got to experience that with you. And I haven't even thought about this a lot, how or why I'm grateful that we got to do that together, but I am in so many ways that I didn't go into that scenario and situation alone, because I leaned on you a lot those 3 days, and got to pair up with you in the scenarios that we were in, because those were 3 physically demanding and very mentally demanding days. And for me, I've been wrestling for almost 2 decades at that point. I think I was the oldest guy there. So my body was telling me, dude, like we talked about earlier, wrestling school, everything in your first bump going, well, I'd had millions of moments in over 2 decades that my body was telling me, what the hell are you doing here and why are you doing this? So all of that to say, how was that experience for you mentally? And what did that teach you about yourself?
So it taught me that you can do this, for one.
Good.
It taught me that everything that they put us through, we did, and I like to think that I did it successfully. It gave me confidence that I can do this. Like you know, like I can do this. I can hang here. I definitely feel, not to say that like it doesn't come up from a place of ego, because I knew that there was much more that I can learn and I can grow, but I knew that this was an environment that I would thrive in if given the opportunity.
That's really interesting for you to say. And I haven't thought about that either myself, but I would come out and say the same thing, which is interesting because neither of us got signed from that situation.
That's the other thing I was going to bring
right?
up,
Like
I took that chance and I bet on myself, and it didn't work out how I'd planned it to. So now I have to pivot and figure out, okay, well, what are you going to do now? And how I responded to that was, again, like, okay, well, like I always knew that was going to be an option, but I didn't focus on that. I focused on what could be.
Yeah.
Because that's how you want to go into it. But when that scenario does hit, what do you do with it, right? And I think for me, having gone through struggles with my family and stuff, that it was kind of like, well, you've been through worse. And so, yes, this sucks, but you can get past this. If you let it, if you don't want it to, then you won't, but you can, because you know. And so like, it was just that, well, you got to move forward. We'll figure it out, pick up the pieces and keep going.
Yeah.
And having a support system is super key. And I had a really good support system with EY and just, all of the friends and family that I had made within pro wrestling already. So it was, it was also a motivator as far as like, okay, like maybe it's time to look at things a little differently now, repackage yourself. So from like a artistic standpoint, it helped me focus on something else as opposed to focusing on, I didn't get the job.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Gave me, okay, well, what do we need to change up, or should we change things up, or just thinking of other things of going forward.
And we're constantly doing that as wrestlers, I think. But that's also I think that's a life lesson for people, though. This situation that us wrestlers are in all the time, like how do I change myself? How do I evolve? Because I have to change something about myself to keep moving forward, right? In wrestling, to stay relevant and to keep the train on the tracks, you constantly have to change and evolve. Otherwise, you get stale and stagnant. Well, what a amazing metaphor for life, in the sense that there's not many situations in life where you think you're forced to go, what do I have to change about myself to move forward? we're not often put in that scenario in life, but we should think about that. If we internalize that, that would help us move forward, because in every scenario that we're put in our lives, any obstacle, if we internalized and said, well, what do I have to do right now and change and evolve about myself and my character, my personality as a human to help me keep moving forward? Like, I think that's such a unique, because a lot of people, they don't internalize it, right? They go, well, you need to change something because you're stopping me from doing that. Or you have to do this. Otherwise I can't do that.
Yeah. If only this wasn't here, I could get around it.
Yeah. We can't do that as wrestlers. If we just go, well, this guy's not giving me the push. And that's the thing. Some wrestlers do that. They go, well, if you just pushed me, then I could be the champ. Well, guess what, dude? It doesn't work that way. Like, you have to change something about yourself if you want that to happen.
Yes.
Same in life. Stop pointing fingers at other people and saying they have to do this to make you successful. Look at yourself and go, what do I got to do to make the change?
It's having that comfortability with yourself that, one, maybe there's something that you yourself do need to change. But the way I look at it is like, yes, I'm not perfect. And yes, there's probably stuff that I need to change, but it's also like that I'm in control of that.
Good.
Whereas if they're not pushing me because of this guy, well, guess what? You're not in control of that guy. There's nothing that you can, focus on what you can control in order to make that change. And then it'll happen eventually. It'll happen, but you're not in control of factors working against you. You're only in control so much. So if that is, what do I change? Well, then, I can handle that because, again, I'm in control of it. Yeah.
What a good mindset. So you find yourself, you're back in Impact Wrestling like you are right now, where you've done some pivoting, you've done some soul searching, you've gone through this process of not getting signed. You work your ass off, you keep moving forward, you're back in Impact Wrestling. Now, I've been asked this question a million times, what was different about Impact Wrestling in your second run than it was in your first? Because the management is different. And I'm not going to ask you that question, Steve.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to ask you to internalize it. How were you different in your second run than you were in your first that changed the experience for you? How had you grown and changed as a person that's made this second run so much different?
I'm older, for one.
Yeah.
But with that comes experience. And so walking into walking into territory that feels similar but isn't similar at the same time, because there's a bunch of, changes from management to roster to where the building is to the size of everything. You're like, okay, it's being comfortable with being uncomfortable.
Interesting.
So my physical scenario, I might not be 100% comfortable with, but I've also been in that situation before, and I know how to navigate it. You have to just kind of deal with the uncomfortableness, and you'll find your way, right? So as a person, I came now I'm the second time I'm married. So I have like a wife, and we have a house, and we have dogs, and there's family to look after and provide for. And with that, it kind of gave me this sight of like, it kind of takes some pressure off, because up to that, it's because wrestling necessarily isn't everything at this point. You come to find, especially for people who have kids, they know this too. Like where the things that mattered to you before don't really matter. As long as X, Y, and Z is taken care of, everything else is okay.
Right.
So for me, coming in there a little older with a little bit more experience and having these new responsibilities, I looked at the second go around as like, because it wasn't a guaranteed thing. It was, would you like to come in for a few days? We had somebody else and they can't make it. We thought of you. You're close. Sure. Looked at it as this is a 2-day job interview. Right. And let's just have fun with it. You know what you're doing, because I've been doing it for so long. So, you're not going to be as starstruck or mesmerized by the TV cameras and the lights and all the stuff that kind of affected you this go around.
Mhm.
You know,
Yeah.
I'm kind of used to these colorful blurs at this point.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Mhm.
So, and I'm coming at it with a different mindset of like, again, like it takes a little bit of the pressure off because like, okay, even if this doesn't work out, you've been through worse. And at the end of the day, does it really matter? Yes, to a certain degree. But again, if the wife's happy, if our kids are okay, the house is fine, then everything else will fall into place. It'll be okay.
I love that take on it. I've said this to so many people in the past, the people that aren't in that mindset yet, where they think if they just get signed on television, then they will be happy and that will bring them joy, right? And their whole sense of happiness and purpose is just to get that contract. And I tell these young guys over and over again, dude, if that is your source of joy, your success in professional wrestling, you are setting yourself up for disaster.
Oh, 1,000%.
Because that is, you are going to make it and you're going to realize, wait a minute, this isn't the meaning of life, is getting this contract. So I never thought of it in the way you put it though, Steve, is it actually takes the pressure off.
I'll bet.
Right. So the thing I could add to that when I'm giving that advice to the young guys is, hey guys, you're just putting undue pressure on yourself by thinking that this has to be the be all and end all. Find your source of joy somewhere else. Find it in your family, in a wife, in your children. And this is sometimes guys that already have a wife and kids and they're miserable because they're not getting their contracts. Like, dude, you've got a beautiful family. You've got a beautiful wife. Really stop and think and realize that is your source of joy. And if you can, that takes the pressure off. And then if the pressure's off, then you perform better. You see that interesting cycle? Where if you can break that cycle, it's actually going to be to your benefit. Because as you say, it takes the pressure off. And then once the pressure's off, man,
then you can have fun.
You can have fun and let loose. And that's the best thing you can do to be successful in wrestling, is just have fun.
1,000%.
Yeah.
And to realize too, like, for any of those people who are thinking or looking at wrestling like, oh, I just got to get signed, the contract is the end all be all. There is no end all be all. It doesn't exist. There's no gem at the end of the journey. The gem is the journey. Okay, so like when we're done wrestling, we don't get a watch or whatever. Like you don't like it's. There's no prize at the end of it. What you're doing, what you're experiencing right now, that is the prize.
Yes.
That's it.
What we talked about earlier, probably well over an hour ago now, because you've been so generous with your time with me, is when we were talking about the struggle of the indies. Mm-hmm. You said, well, I didn't view it as a struggle. I was just so happy that I felt privileged enough that I got to even experience that. That is the thing.
Yes.
It's about the journey, not the destination. It's a cliche, but it's true. Because that's exactly what you're saying, right? The gem is the fact that you just get to even do this. So if you're a quote unquote struggling independent wrestler right now that's just miserable because you don't have a contract, dude, what you're experiencing right now every weekend on the road with your friends, that is what you're going to look back on and realize those are the best moments of my life. That is the gem that you get, that experience. And no amount of money or event or WrestleMania or pay-per-view or Slammiversary, or it doesn't matter what your goal is, that's not going to make that gem any shinier. Just appreciate and love the ride that you're on. Steve, I want to wrap up because you've given me a lot to think about. I think you've given a lot of young wrestlers, and even if you're not a wrestler, I think if you're just somebody that's not even necessarily a wrestling fan that has come to this podcast because they want some life motivation, I think they've got a lot of that from you today. I want to give you an opportunity as someone who has taught me a lot to talk about how you are teaching people right now in your life with your wrestling school. Plug your wrestling school, your teaching people, you're passing on all this amazing knowledge that you've given us to the younger generation, the next generation of wrestlers. Talk to me about what you're doing right now with your wrestling school.
Yes, so a friend of mine and myself, obviously, we just opened up Net Pro Studios here in Kingsport, Tennessee. The building, we have been privileged enough to call it the Bobby Eaton Arena.
Wow.
We've gotten the permission from Bobby's family, and we had them at our grand opening, and we're just trying to take the spirit of Bobby Eaton and apply that into our students. And I'm trying to take what I have learned throughout my years of professional wrestling and my teachings from Eric Young and impart that into any inspiring professional wrestler. It's very new. Like I said, we just opened up, but we have a good group of students. The school's open Monday to Friday, I believe. I'm there every Tuesday. Yeah. So if you are in the Tennessee area and you happen to be listening to this, please follow us on all of our social medias. You can find us on Instagram under Net Pro Studios, and we're under Facebook as well, Net Pro Studios.
Let me add something to that, Steve.
Yes.
Scratch what you just said. If you're in the Tennessee area, check us out. No. If you're anywhere on the planet right now, check it out. And the reason I say that is I think a lot of people make the mistake of, I'm just going to choose a wrestling school because it's close. That's the biggest mistake one of the biggest mistakes you can make. You want to go to a wrestling school that's going to teach you properly and teach you how to do this business the right way and approach it like a business, but also teach you something about yourself as a man or a woman. And you have done nothing but prove that over the last 2 hours that you've been talking to me, and however many parts this ends up being on my podcast. Hopefully this podcast itself has been enough of an advertisement to people that wherever they're listening to this, they know they're going to get some amazing knowledge passed on to them from you, and they need to be willing to travel to go get that knowledge. Because you shouldn't pick a wrestling school.
Okay, fair enough. I'll take
because
that.
of geography.
Okay. Yeah.
But don't take this. Does geography?
No.
Just take that out of it. You want to go to where the best is, and I'm gonna put you over if you're not willing to put yourself over. You're the best. You're the best.
Thank you.
So
I appreciate that.
And it's because you've learned from the best, though, too, Steve. Right? Like you've got 2 decades of experience. I mean, you've got an amazing mentor in EY who's mentored both of us. All the lessons that he's taught you, you can pass on. But you're not just passing on just lessons from Eric Young. You're passing on lessons from other guys you've gotten to know over a number of years, like a Ricky Morton. Sure. You've learned all these things from one of the best baby faces in the history of the business, and Ricky Morton, and those lessons that he's taught you, now you can pass them on. Like all of these amazing mentors that you've had over these years, you compile all that knowledge, and now you get to pass it on. It's a wonderful thing. It's why this business is so beautiful. I'm excited for you that you get to do that.
I'm excited as well. And speaking of which, I have to get going shortly here so I can do that. And
Hell yeah.
To the building.
Yes.
And teach some people. I will say this has been an awesome conversation. Thank you so much for this. And it's almost the perfect thing to have before I go to the school today, because it's fired me up. I feel good.
Yeah.
It gives me good vibes. I'm feeling really good about it. So
I didn't know what I was going to be able to get out of you, Steve, because we're just good friends, right? Like we don't always just sit down and have like life conversations. We do. Absolutely.
Sure.
Which is one of the reasons why I know we would have a good conversation, but I wasn't expecting it. I wasn't expecting it to go as long as it has, and for you to be as generous with your time as you have been. I'm so grateful for. I want to keep you, because my carny self wants to keep you for like 2 more minutes. And I'm going to tease the audience right now. You got to go over to my patreon.com/Cody Deaner, because Steve is going to tell me a never before heard story that's only going to be available to people that are my patrons. So we're going to end this now, and then we're going to go, we're going to go behind the paywall, which means you're going to have to give me money and become a patron to hear this next story, Steve, that will wrap up, and you can just do a very quick version of whatever that is, but you have to go to patreon.com/Cody Deaner to sign up and to be able to hear this story. So Steve, thank you so much for being on Wrestling is Life is Wrestling with Cody Deaner. I'll end it the way I started it. I love you. You're my friend, and I love you very much. So thank you.
I love you too, buddy.
And there we have it. That brings us to the end of our epic trilogy with my good friend Crazy Steve. I'm sad that it's over in a lot of ways. Oh, it's done. I've gotten so much from this conversation with my buddy Steve, and I know that a lot of you have gotten something from hearing this story and learning these things that you had no idea about Steve and about what some of wrestlers have to go through, especially a wrestler like Steve who came from nothing and was born legally blind. What a story. Oh, like I said, I'm almost sad that it's over, but it's not over because Steve's journey and story is not over. Steve is wrestling with one of the top professional wrestling organizations in the world, the same company that I work for, Impact Wrestling, which is seen in the United States each and every week on Access TV on Thursday nights, and each and every week in Canada on the Fight Network, as well as literally all around the world. Impact Wrestling airs in 120 countries in 150 million homes around the world have access to that show. And my buddy Crazy Steve, who was born from nothing, born legally blind, this skinny little kid that had a dream to be a professional wrestling, is doing that right now each and every week, literally in front of millions of people all around the world. So his story is not done. And what's really cool is the release of this trilogy that I have put out there in the world correlates with Steve now sharing his journey in a really unique and creative way with this new character development that we see of him on Impact Wrestling. So if you are a wrestling fan who maybe hasn't seen Impact in a couple years, or you've never seen it ever at all, give it a chance. In my humble opinion, Impact Wrestling is the best professional wrestling show on television today. And one of the most intriguing and unique characters in professional wrestling is my buddy Crazy Steve, who's doing such cool things on Impact Wrestling each and every Thursday. So check him out. His story's also not done because he's passing his knowledge on to the rest of the world in wrestling through his professional wrestling school. You've heard me talk about it on this show. You heard us just talking about it at the end of our conversation. That's Net Pro Studios. He's passing his knowledge on because knowledge isn't knowledge unless you pass it on. I was told that personally in a locker room once by the one and only Bret the Hitman Hart. He dropped some knowledge on me and I thanked him, and he said, "Hey, you don't need to thank me. Knowledge isn't knowledge unless you pass it on, and I'm just passing it on to you." Oh man, so Steve, he's doing the same thing that Bret Hart does when he passes his knowledge on to the next generation. Steve is taking all the things that he's learned both from his mentors and in his experience that you have heard all about in great detail over the last number of weeks. He's passed it on to the next generation at Net Pro Studios. So go check them out on Facebook.com/Net Pro Studios and go check out Crazy Steve on all his socials and let him know how much he means to you, because he means a lot to me. I just want to say thank you again for all the support and all my patrons who have been supporting me, helping me make this podcast a reality and bringing it to you each and every week. And we're building a catalog there of our ad-free shows over on patreon.com/Cody Deaner. Go check it out. It's not just the podcast stuff. There's all a bunch of behind the scenes videos with my kids and cool stuff that they're doing as well. That's all over at patreon.com/Cody Deaner. ProWrestlingTees.com/Cody Deaner for getting yourself a t-shirt. You want a personal video for your friends, family members, go to cameo.com/Cody Deaner. If you're a business and you want to advertise, like I said at the beginning of this show, we're in the top 70 wrestling podcasts in the United States. We're in the top 30 in Canada. If you want to advertise on this show, hit me up at ads@CodyDeaner.com. That's ads@CodyDeaner.com, or head on over to CodyDeaner.com/podcast. Put your information right there in the form, and we'll figure out how we can bring more business to your business. Let's talk business together, and we'll make that happen for you. Next week, I have another wicked awesome guest, guys. If you want to find out who that is, then go follow me at Cody Deaner on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and I'll be announcing who next week's guest is shortly, and you are going to love it. We're going to get some more life advice dropped on us because this person also has led a very unique life, not just in the wrestling business, but a very unique life and very special and humbling and inspirational life outside the ring as well. You're going to dig next week's guest, and I can't wait to bring you their story as well. But I'm not going to tell you who it is. You just got to follow me on socials and keep up with us there. And we'll be dropping more wrestling advice on you, more life advice, and why you're going to be doing that, how we're going to be doing that. Well, you guys know that now. It's because you know, just like I know, that wrestling is life, is wrestling. I'm your host, Cody Deaner, and we'll see you again next week.
Wrestling is life. Wrestling is life. Wrestling is life. Is wrestling.